Hey, what's up guys? This is Nick at Stridewise.com. Today I'm checking out the most popular boot from Indonesia's most popular bootmaker, Sagara. So a little fact about me, I'm pretty obsessed with Indonesia. I mean, I live in New York City, but I grew up in Australia, and Indonesia is practically our closest neighbor. Like the Solomon Islands are closer, but Indonesia, practically our closest neighbor. Definitely our biggest neighbor. If you're an American, you can try and imagine if Mexico had 10 times the population of America and they were all Muslim, you can get a very rough idea of the dynamic between Australia and Indonesia. It's like a very interesting relationship to me. And anyway, Indonesia used to be colonized by the Dutch, and they brought with them, I mean, they went there to like export cash crops and spices and things like that. What they brought over, among many other things, was a love of nice European leather boots. So when they left after World War II, that industry sort of was still there. And now Indonesia is the place you order very nice boots if you don't want to pay like American or European or Japanese or whatever prices. I actually interviewed the founder of Sagara on my website. I'm going to put the link in the description below if you want to learn a little bit more about the company. But for now, let's get a closer look at the Legacy 9 boot. Now, Sagara's three most popular models are the Legacy, the Regent, and the Cordmaster. I went with the Legacy 9, which they describe as, quote, good looking and, quote, comfortable yet stylishly sturdy. And I quite like that description of it. That's a good way to describe it. This is the Sagara pull-up leather. It came out a bit darker than I was expecting based on the pictures on the site, but I'm still pretty happy with it. This is their least expensive leather, which I didn't actually know when I ordered it. That's not their fault, that's my fault. I didn't look at the pricing list. It's still very nice leather, although it didn't waste any time creasing. And I should really emphasize that this brand is just completely customizable. They have a bunch of other leathers you can pick from, which I'm going to get into in the next section. You can also customize the sole. You can get engravings on it. You can really do like whatever you want to these boots. This is the one that I got. This has a gusseted tongue for better water resistance. It's also fully lined with lambskin. It's got the Sagara rubber sole, which has like these like wings on the bottom, which I thought was pretty cool. You can also get like a leather sole and a commando sole and stuff like that. Now, if you're looking at this boot and it's reminding you of the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill, you are not alone. It does have a lot of similarities with that. I mean, the Higgins Mill is made with Chrome XL. This is not. The Higgins Mill has a storm welt. This is a hand welt, which is very unusual because it is an extremely laborious task making a hand welted boot. But that's what they do at Sagara, which I think is a pretty interesting touch, especially for the price point, which I'm going to get into a little bit later on. But in any case, the silhouette and the aesthetics, very similar to the Higgins Mill. It's got this nice plain service boot-like aesthetic. It's got a very plain toe. It's not particularly flat on the toe, but nonetheless, this is a boot that is pretty easy to dress up and not that hard to dress down. Now, you can pick from 15 different leathers when you order this shoe. You can get aniline dyed pull-up and pull-up retan and rough out and butter calf leather and a bunch of others. This is the Sagara pull-up leather. It is made from full grain cowhide and it's tanned with a chromium tanning agent. So it's chrome tanned, although it's not particularly shiny, but it is chrome tanned leather, which would be definitely a big part of the reason why it's the least expensive leather they have. And it's finished with various kinds of oils and waxes. And it's Indonesian leather, it comes from Indonesian cows. Sagara keeps the precise tannery they use secret, which sounds strange to most people, but it actually isn't all that unusual. A lot of brands, Trickers does this, they do the same thing to help keep competitors from stealing their look. But not all of their leather is Indonesian. They have cordovan and calfskin from Italy and Japan. They've got Japanese horsehide, and some of their boots are made from Horween leather as well. But this boot's upper is domestic Indonesian cowhide. And like I mentioned earlier, it creases relatively quickly. It's not vegetable tanned leather, it is chrome tanned, which would have maybe something to do with that. In any case, I was staying at a friend's place for the first week of wearing these and I didn't bring shoe trees with me, so that could be my fault. Now, Sagara believes that only products with natural ingredients are best for taking care of their leather. So to that end, they recommend Saphir, which is a really popular brand for shoe care products. Probably second only to Venetian shoe cream. This is just in my experience, it's just what I hear people talking about. Venetian shoe cream contains some petroleum, whereas Saphir doesn't, so that's why this got their mark of quality from Sagara. So you can probably use Saphir's greasy leather cream or Saphir's Renovator on these shoes if you want them to be a little bit shinier. Sagara is also planning on coming out with their own leather care products, but they haven't yet, so right now they're just kind of telling you to lean on Saphir. Now, they also will say that if you send the boots out to them, they will take care of and condition and treat the leather absolutely free, which sounds like a good deal until you remember that I paid $70 to have these shipped from Indonesia to the United States, and of course you have to pay that both ways. So I would just stick with Saphir for now. Okay, so for the sole, this is a micro rubber outsole. They call it Sagara rubber, and it's 100% rubber, so it's not like a mixture of rubber and nitrile cork or something like that. And it's nice, you know, it's not too soft, it's not too hard. I mean, it is relatively hard, but the grip is really nice, so I'm not really complaining too much about the outsole, except the fact that it is peeling a little bit at the front, which I was not crazy about. The midsole is about a 9-iron leather, and you can decide to order it with 2 leather midsoles if you like. Mine actually came with one for free because when they finished making it with the single insole, they said that they made the shoe a bit roomier than they meant to, so I got a free midsole to help shore that up, which was very cool of them. The downside of all these midsoles is it's not super flexible, but I'm still happy I got a free midsole anyway. Now it's totally lined with lambskin, and there's a steel shank for arch support and stability. And to add to the arch support, there's what they call an arch support footbed made from molded EVA foam to provide support for the natural arch of the foot and to relieve strain on the muscles of the foot when you're walking and standing for long periods of time. Not many companies use EVA foam. I know Thursday uses one kind, Thorogood also uses one in their mock toes, but especially for such an old world company like Sagara, I was pretty impressed with that they use a modern technique like EVA foam. And speaking of old-fashioned boot making, this is hand welted. And it's extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming to hand welt shoes, which is why most shoes these days, at least most high-quality shoes, are Goodyear welted instead, which uses a machine. This is a flat welt, and hand welting is one of the oldest ways of constructing shoes. So that's something that a lot of boot purists are going to be happy with. Now, as for the fit and the sizing, this boot is made on what they call the Mark last, and they have a few different lasts you can choose from with different descriptions. Some are a bit more voluminous, some are a little bit more tight. Most of them are on the D width though. Some are on the E. I didn't see any for like, you know, triple E or B or C. So I'm not sure how much luck you're going to have if you have like unusually wide or narrow feet. It's such a customizable brand though. I'm sure they can probably work something out for you, but I can't officially say if you're going to be okay with those shoe sizes. And with the sizing, they go with European sizes. So it was pretty easy to pick out my size in that, you know, in America, you have to always wonder if a boot company runs large or small. Out there, I just told them I was a 45 and then they made me a 45 shoe. And this is how it came. And it fit really well. As far as actually wearing it in, I got to say the leather was very stiff when I first wore them. But I was pleased to say that I didn't get any blisters or anything. As I mentioned, this is fully lined with lambskin, which is pretty nice, and it like lowers the odds of abrasion and stuff like that happening. And the arch support is pretty solid too, because of all those arch support elements I mentioned in the sole section. So how much do these Indonesian boots cost? This is the biggest selling point for the brand itself. These boots, they cost $235 for a pair of these like hand-lasted, hand-welted boots. It's a pretty extraordinary price. I got a 10% discount because I wrote that interview about them, so just full disclosure, I paid more like $211, but the shipping was $70 to get it here, so you will probably pay in the area of $300 for a pair of these boots. Now this is the least expensive leather. If you get something like their vegetable tanned leather, that adds $20 to the price. So there's all these little things that can change the cost of the boots, but about $300 is what you're looking at here. Now, while we're talking about the purchasing and the ordering process, I gotta say it was very lengthy, which is probably the biggest downside. Like the upside is the cost, of course. The downside, I mean, I said to them in an email the words like, I want to order a pair of your legacy boots on May 13th, and it took about like over a month of back and forth as far as like picking out the leather and the sole and everything else going on there. And I actually gave them the money for the boots like 2 months later, like mid-July, and the boots didn't actually arrive at my doorstep until mid-October. So it was like a 6 month, like 5-6 month ordering process. If you know exactly what you want and you can like really pick out all the leather and everything like immediately, bare minimum like a 3-month process. Now like some of that is because just simply you have to go back and forth like discussing like what happens if I do this, like what are the qualities of this leather and so on. There was of course a language barrier as well. There's guys like, you know, English is not their first language. Their English is fine, but there is a bit of a language barrier. More than anything, they just aren't crazy responsive. Like a lot of the time, sometimes like days, now and then like a week or two would pass in between emails trying to sort this out. Now that might not be your experience, but just in my experience, yeah, it was a very lengthy ordering process, and again, just big downside. Okay, so why should you get a pair of Sagara boots? They're completely 100% customizable, which is like a really nice feeling. You know what I mean? You can get whatever kind of leather you want, whatever kind of sole. You can get an engraving. You can get whatever kind of trim you want. You can customize how many speed hooks you want. All these different aspects of the boot, and that really adds this sort of old world air to it. The fact that these guys, you pay the money and they go and they start making the boots specifically to you. It lets you get like more involved in the process. Like the boots just kind of mean more to you, especially given the fact that it takes like a long time to get them and everything else. It's also just very inexpensive. I mean, like there are a lot of places that can customize your boots for you. To get a customized pair for $300, including shipping, with this sort of quality is really remarkable. Again, these are hand welted, like that's a really laborious process. I'm not sure about Sagara, but their competitor Santalum, who I spoke to, their factory in Indonesia can only churn out like a pair of boots every 2 or 3 days. Like it's a really long process to make a pair of boots. So that makes you get like more invested in them. They feel more you have more of a relationship with the boots. It's a really nice aspect of the company. And what's more is that they're very good looking boots and they're really good quality. So there's a lot to like here when it comes to the quality and the brand itself. Now, there are a few downsides to Sagara. I mean, well, first of all, the heel is quite a bit taller than I thought it was going to be. This is over 1.5 inches tall. This giant wooden heel. Probably the Dutch influence has something to do with that. I don't know. I could be making that up, but it seems kind of Dutchy. Another thing is that the leather creased kind of quickly. Again, that's probably partly my fault, but and again, they have a lot more expensive leathers you can choose from. I got the cheapest, so that could be all on me. But a big downside is that the the rubber is sort of peeling at the front of the boot, of both boots as well. It doesn't look like it's going to come off anytime soon, but that was a little bit of a bummer. But of course, the biggest bummer with these shoes is just the amount of time it took me to get them. It was 6 months, man. I mean, you know, minimum 3 months if you really know exactly what you want. A lot of that has to do with the slight language barrier. It's not a huge issue, the language barrier. Like they speak English. I mean, not perfectly, but they speak English. It's okay. And I am a big fan of, like, you know, supporting sort of industries like this, where like the money really means a lot to them and everything. So I'm not going to say it's a downside necessarily that they have that language barrier. But the fact is that I often went like days and days between emails with them. The whole process could have been tightened up a little bit more, and you might find that frustrating. Now, I do need to also say that I know a lot of other people I've read online on like the Goodyear Welt subreddit and everything. Their experience was a bit smoother. The whole thing came a bit faster. So I'm really just talking about my individual experience here. But from my experience, yeah, it took a while to get these boots. All right, so that's my review of the Legacy 9 boot from Sagara. If you want to read the full written review and check out some more pictures of it, where I get a bit more in depth with everything, just Google the full written review. Just Google Stridewise and Sagara. You can also see my interview with the founder of the company there as well. And make sure you subscribe as well, and let me know what you think in the comments below.